Hey guys, so I've got a bit of a secret to share with you. Yes, that's right. I've just gotten back from a whole day riding the new Scrambler 400X. If you watch my channel, you'll know that I love my Scrambler 1200. So will the 400cc single cylinder stack up? Stick around and find out. So if you've been living under a rock recently, you might not know that Triumph have been making some big moves in new and exciting directions. And in particular, the 400cc single cylinder lineup, including the classic Roadster Speed 400 and modern classic Scrambler 400X. Today I'm going to be focusing on the Scrambler because that's my thing, but I did ride both bikes and found them both appealing in their own separate ways. Firstly, I want to be upfront, this review is only a first impression. We had amazing weather, great roads, plus a support crew from Triumph Australia who ran a tight ship and made sure the day ran perfectly. So I didn't really have enough time to figure out all of the detailed things that you learn from owning a bike and putting a few thousand Ks on the clock. Plus, we all know that when you're out adventuring, things go wrong, you get rain, slippery roads, random things happen, or you take a corner too fast, and that can change your mind on things. So in the future, I'm hoping for an opportunity to put the 400X through its paces over a longer period of time and through some more types of terrain, off-road, in wet weather, and all those sorts of challenges where you get a better feel for what the bike is really made of. Going into this test ride, I had expectations based on other 400s and single cylinders that I've ridden. But to be honest, the Scrambler 400X was not what I was expecting, and I reckon it would be a huge mistake to just compare this bike on paper specs alone. So stick around and let me explain why. A learner accessible range has been long awaited by many Triumph fans, myself included. If this bike was available when I started riding, I honestly would have had much easier and more enjoyable time learning to ride. The Scrambler 400X makes for an ideal bike not only for learners, but those looking for an entry adventure bike with a combination of maneuverability and comfort, not to mention the awesome price. I still can't believe they're offering this high quality finish for essentially $10,000 in Australia in 2024. I'll go into each of these aspects in more detail in the following sections, but what I think is important is that this bike hits a bunch of notes for learners and experienced riders alike. So much so that I even came away from riding it with seriously dangerous thoughts about buying one myself. Now, this is probably the characteristic of the 400X that blew me away the most. The 400cc single cylinder double overhead cam engine pulls harder and feels smoother than most others I've ridden in its class. Coming from a 1200, I honestly wonder sometimes what I'd do with all that extra power, because on the 400X, I reached the limit of my own skill long before I reached the limit of the bike. And to back that up, some bloody good riders I was with said similar things. 400X has 39 horsepower and 37 newton meters of torque, which on paper makes it comparable with similar bikes in its category. But if you see my other videos, you'll know my opinion on making a decision based on paper specs alone. The real magic is how that power is delivered, and the almost flat torque curve through the rev range means that the 400X pulls long and hard. And that makes the 400X stand out amongst its peers. If that wasn't enough for you, there's more hidden magic in the balancing and smooth delivery of the power through the rev range. And just for those who haven't ridden a single cylinder engine, they can be known for a lot of vibration, especially at higher revs. So when I spoke to some of the Triumph team, they let me know that the 400cc was a complete ground up design and build using the knowledge and expertise that Triumph engineers have developed in balancing other engines across their range. And geez, they've done a damn good job. This translates to a very smooth power delivery throughout most of the rev range, so you can easily forget you're on a 400cc single. This means you can focus on the most important thing, enjoying the ride. Gearing goes hand in hand with power delivery, so if it's wrong, it can make a great engine feel absolutely rubbish. Also, the fact the 400X is aimed at a learner rider, the gearing needs to take that into account, which I think Triumph have done really well. First gear is very forgiving and almost unstallable, with that low end also great for chugging through technical on or off-road. As for the rest, I found the gears well spaced all the way up to 110 kilometers an hour and I assume beyond, so riding along the highways was not a worry. And then through the twisties and tight hairpins, I could easily find a gear even if I kept a higher gear. That low down torque helped pull it hard through and out of the corner without a worry. And that's one of the things this bike does the best. The 400 saw me through the corner without giving me more things to think about. This meant that I could focus on riding and just rolling on and off the throttle, which was really satisfying. As for the off-road, I didn't get the chance yet, but the lower gears feel like they'd be perfect for slower riding, especially if you need traction, which is a really important aspect for off-road. One interesting thing is the single cylinder means that you're getting more grip, and it's related to the fact that it only has one ignition cycle for every 2 turns of the crank. So that's why you see a lot of single cylinder off-road bikes. If you want to learn more on that, I'll put some links in the description below. So according to Triumph, the Scrambler 400X is designed for urban exploration. But what does that mean? I think what they're talking about is versatility, and that appeals to a lot of riders these days. They want a bike they can use for several things, maybe commuting, adventuring, camping, and not be restricted by the terrain or roads that they're riding. And this is where a balanced suspension and handling setup is so important. In my experience so far, good suspension and handling for this kind of bike isn't just about having the biggest, longest, most expensive suspension in the market. It's way more complex than that, and it takes years of trial and error testing different frame geometries, handlebar positions, weight distribution, and so many other factors. Luckily for us, that's been done by Triumph over years of learning and experience, and that's why I was so impressed with the balance of responsive handling and agility on smooth roads with predictability on uneven surfaces. Those traits are normally sacrificed one way or the other, and it feels to me like Triumph have really hit the sweet spot here. The 400X gave me the feeling of control in almost all situations, whether I was navigating through city traffic, taking on winding roads in the countryside, or even through unexpected bumps in corners or through terrain. I can easily see myself taking this off-road with no worries at all. The 19-inch front wheel and 150mm suspension soak up the bumps, but still give a feeling of control and a nice seating position to be able to respond, as well as a level of feedback that I've come to enjoy with my 1200. It was actually so similar that I almost forgot I was on a completely different bike. Seat height is one thing I see a lot of new and experienced riders asking about when they're looking at new bikes. And I can understand it's important to feel confident that you can balance the bike with 2 feet. Personally, I think the Scrambler 400 is a little on the tall side, but for a very average height person myself, I'm 173 centimeters or 5'8" tall, I could touch the balls of my feet. So I felt pretty confident. So compared with other bikes in its class, it sits about middle of the pack. Some are taller, some are shorter, and that's a decision you're gonna have to make yourself. One word of caution when you are making that decision is to consider the fact that if you do buy a bike that is a little taller, you're gonna get better off-road performance, but also as a rider, you're gonna get better at balancing that taller bike. So it's going to make you a better rider overall. These are the things you should consider when you're talking about seat height. This should come as no surprise, but in my personal opinion, Triumph are making some of the best looking bikes in the market. With their modern classic styling, they are absolutely nailing it. And with the 400X, Triumph have nailed it yet again. The most visible aspects from afar, like the fuel tank with really nice colorways, meets the line of the faux leather seat with an upswept removable pillion seat, that looks absolutely awesome. The lines of the bike just flow through from front to back, and combined with the classic styling make for an awesome overall look. The low mounted upswept dual tip exhaust still has a Scrambler style, and the styling flows throughout the bike with every single little detailed part a work of art. My favourite part of the styling is actually how they've matched up the angled line of the engine fins with these covers along the side, and it's tied all the way back to the upswept seat line and really adds to that aggressive Scrambler stance. Finally, if you needed one more thing to get excited about, the 400X actually comes with all of these fittings straight off the showroom floor. Normally things like the handlebar brace and the headlight grille, they're all optional extras, but with the Scrambler 400X, you get the lot at the on-road price, under 10k. To tie in with the looks, Triumph have nailed that iconic thumper sound with the stock exhaust producing a nice low note at idle, almost the equivalent of other singles I've heard with aftermarket Akrapovic cams or something like that. This is something I can foresee people modifying to suit their own needs, but I also think straight out of the box it hits the mark. Right, verdict time. So what does this all mean? Well, to be honest, I started with an open mind, not expecting much, but whilst I was riding this bike, I was grinning from ear to ear the entire time. And that, I think, is one of the best measures of a good bike. I'm going to say it again, the Scrambler 400X blew my mind. So much so that I'm now having very dangerous thoughts about buying one. I wouldn't want you to assume though is that this bike is only for learners. Experienced riders will also have a great time on it. But if there was one thing I want you to take away from this video, it'd be to stop what you're doing, stop umming and ahhing over dollars, specs and stats, and go out and book a test ride with your local dealer and get a feel for the Scrambler 400. Otherwise, you could be missing out on something very special.